I never thought I'd be the type of person to go to war with my HOA president. I'm a private equity attorney who values peace and quiet, which is exactly why I bought my house on Maple Grove Lane 3 years ago. The neighborhood was perfect. Mature oak trees, well-maintained homes, and a community that seemed to respect boundaries. Then Karen Whitmore moved in next door and got herself elected HOA president within 6 months. Karen was the kind of person who measured her grass with a ruler to make sure it was exactly 2.5 inches tall. She had short blonde hair cut in that distinctive speak-to-the-manager style, and she drove a white SUV with vanity plates that read HOA Boss. I should have seen it coming, but I was too busy with a major acquisition deal to pay attention to neighborhood politics. The first time we met, she knocked on my door at 7:30 on a Saturday morning to inform me that my mailbox was half an inch too far to the left according to the HOA guidelines. I smiled politely, thanked her for letting me know, and privately wondered if she had anything better to do with her time. I adjusted the mailbox that afternoon just to keep the peace. If you're enjoying this story of HOA insanity, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Karen Eat World. We've got hundreds of stories about entitled people getting exactly what they deserve, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in this one. Now, back to Karen and her reign of terror. Things escalated slowly at first. Karen left notes on my car about parking at 6 inches over the line in my own driveway. She sent me formal letters about the color of my window curtains being off-white instead of approved cream. She even tried to fine me because my outdoor thermometer wasn't on the approved decorations list. I handled each complaint professionally, making minor adjustments when they were reasonable and politely pushing back when they weren't. Then I adopted Beethoven. He was a gorgeous orange tabby cat I'd rescued from a shelter, named after my favorite composer. Beethoven was an indoor-outdoor cat who loved to explore the neighborhood during the day and come home at night. He was microchipped, wore a collar with tags, and was the friendliest cat you'd ever meet. All my immediate neighbors loved him except, of course, Karen. The first complaint came via email. "Karen, your cat was in my yard today. This is unacceptable. Pets must be leashed or confined per HOA Regulations Section 12.4. I responded politely, explaining that the regulation referred to dogs, and that cats were traditionally allowed to roam as they're nearly impossible to leash train and it's normal behavior for outdoor cats in suburban neighborhoods. She didn't like that answer. The next week, she installed motion-activated sprinklers around her entire property line. Fine, I thought. Beethoven will just avoid her yard. But Karen wasn't satisfied with deterrence. She wanted control, and more importantly, she wanted to win. 2 months into this Cold War, I came home from work to find Beethoven missing. This wasn't unusual by itself. Sometimes he'd stay out exploring until 8 or 9 in the evening. But when 10 o'clock rolled around and he still wasn't home, I started to worry. I walked around the neighborhood calling his name, shaking his treat bag, checking all his usual spots. Nothing. At 11, I heard it. A faint meowing coming from Karen's backyard. I grabbed my flashlight and walked to her fence line. There was Beethoven, sitting in what looked like a wire dog crate in the middle of her yard, crying to get out. I knocked on Karen's door. She answered in her bathrobe with a satisfied smile on her face. "Oh, you're looking for the cat?" "Yes, I trapped it. It was trespassing on my property." "Karen, that's my cat. His name is Beethoven. Can you please let him out?" "Not until we resolve this situation properly," she said, crossing her arms. "I've documented 17 instances of this animal entering my yard over the past 2 weeks. That's 17 violations of my property rights. I've called animal control, and they'll be here Monday morning to collect it." It was Friday night. "Karen, you can't hold my cat hostage for 3 days. That's illegal. Let him out right now, or I'm calling the police." She smiled wider. "Go ahead. I checked with my cousin who's a police officer in another county. As long as I provide food and water, I'm perfectly within my rights to contain a trespassing animal until animal control can retrieve it. See you Monday." She closed the door in my face. I stood there, stunned. I could hear Beethoven crying from the backyard. I immediately called the non-emergency police line. The dispatcher was sympathetic but confirmed what Karen had said. Since she was providing food and water and had called animal control, she was technically within her rights to hold the cat until Monday. They suggested I try to work it out with my neighbor or wait for animal control on Monday morning. I spent that entire night researching. As an attorney, I knew there had to be options, but civil law regarding pets is frustratingly limited. Pets are considered property, and the laws protecting them are minimal. I could potentially sue her for emotional distress or unlawful detention of property, but that would take months and wouldn't get Beethoven out of that cage tonight. I tried reasoning with Karen twice more over the weekend. Each time she opened the door with that same smug expression and refused to budge. She'd placed the cage in the center of her yard, visible from my windows, so I had to watch Beethoven huddled in there, confused and scared. She was making a point, and she was enjoying every second of it. Sunday evening, I made a decision. If Karen wanted to play property rights games, I'd show her what real property rights looked like. I spent the night making phone calls to contacts I'd made over 15 years of working in private equity and real estate law. By Monday morning, I had a plan in motion. When the animal control officer arrived at 9 a.m., I met them in Karen's driveway. I explained the situation, showed them Beethoven's microchip registration and vaccination records, and they agreed to release him to me immediately. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring as I carried my cat home. "This isn't over," she called out. "That animal is a nuisance, and I'll make sure it never sets foot on my property again." "Don't worry, Karen," I called back. "We won't have any more problems. I promise." She looked suspicious of my pleasant tone, but I just smiled and took Beethoven inside. He was fine, just scared and hungry. I fed him, let him settle down, and then got to work on phase 1 of my plan. Through my work in private equity, I'd facilitated dozens of real estate acquisitions. I knew property law inside and out, and more importantly, I knew people. One of my former clients ran a property development company that specialized in creative land use solutions. I'd helped him navigate a complicated zoning issue 2 years ago, and he owed me a favor. By Tuesday afternoon, my friend's company had purchased the vacant lot directly behind Karen's house. It had been on the market for months, listed as undevelopable due to wetland restrictions on the back portion of the property. The front portion, however, the part that bordered Karen's backyard fence, was perfectly developable. Karen's house, like mine, backed up to this lot. It was the reason our properties had such nice private backyards with trees and green space behind us. Wednesday morning, Karen found the survey crew marking property lines on the vacant lot. She came running over to see what was happening. The crew politely informed her that the new property owner would be developing the land and they were conducting preliminary surveys. She went pale. By Friday, the permit applications were filed with the county. Everything was perfectly legal and properly documented. The new owner was planning to build a structure on the developable portion of the lot, which happened to run right along the back property line of Karen's house and mine. Karen knocked on my door Friday evening, her usual smugness replaced with concern. "Did you hear about the development behind us? They're going to build something right on the property line. It'll destroy our privacy." "I did hear something about that," I said casually. "Property rights, Karen. The owner can develop their land however they want within the legal parameters. I'm sure you understand." Her eyes narrowed. "You did this." "I don't own that property, Karen. I couldn't possibly control what someone else does with their land. Just like you couldn't control keeping my cat trapped in a cage all weekend, right? Because property rights are so important to you." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She turned and marched back to her house. I knew she'd be researching, trying to find a way to stop the development. She'd discover exactly what I already knew. Everything was completely legal. The structure broke ground 2 weeks later. Karen tried attending county planning meetings. She filed complaints. She even tried to get the HOA to intervene, but since the property wasn't in our HOA jurisdiction, they had no authority. The county had approved all the permits. Everything was by the book. The structure that went up was a cat sanctuary. Specifically, a private cat rescue and rehabilitation facility. My development friend had always wanted to invest in an animal welfare project, and I'd connected him with a local rescue organization that desperately needed a space. The building was beautiful, professionally designed with large windows, outdoor patios, and climbing structures visible from the outside. The best part? The outdoor cat runs extended right up to the property line, separated from Karen's backyard by just the fence. Karen now had a direct view of dozens of cats playing, climbing, and enjoying their outdoor space every single day. The facility operated during daylight hours, so she'd see cats whenever she looked out her back windows. But I wasn't done yet. The rescue facility needed volunteers and staff coming and going regularly. The access road, legally permitted and properly constructed, ran along the side property line between the lot and Karen's house. She went from having a quiet backyard with a peaceful green space behind her to having a steady stream of cars passing by her side yard and dozens of cats visible from her back windows. She tried to complain to the rescue organization. They politely informed her that they were operating a licensed animal welfare facility with all proper permits and inspections. She tried to complain to the county. They confirmed all permits were in order. She even tried to get the HOA to create new rules about nearby animal facilities, but since the sanctuary wasn't in our jurisdiction, the HOA had zero authority over it. 3 months after the facility opened, Karen's house went up for sale. I watched the for sale sign go up from my living room window while Beethoven purred in my lap. The listing mentioned unique neighborhood character but failed to mention the cat sanctuary directly behind the property. I wondered how many potential buyers would make it past the first showing once they realized what was in the backyard. The final piece of my plan revealed itself when Karen had an open house. I made sure to be outside in my yard when potential buyers arrived. Several of them asked me about the neighborhood, and I was honest and friendly. I told them about the wonderful cat rescue facility behind our properties, how it brought such life and joy to the community, and how the organization was planning to expand their operations in the coming years. One buyer asked specifically about the HOA. "Oh, we have an HOA," I said cheerfully. "The president is actually selling her house right now, right next door. She's moving because she doesn't like cats. The rest of us love having the sanctuary here. It's become quite the community gathering place for animal lovers." Not surprisingly, Karen received 0 offers at her asking price. She had to reduce it twice before finally accepting a lowball offer that barely covered her mortgage. The new neighbors who moved in were a lovely couple in their 60s who volunteered at the cat sanctuary on weekends. They thought having it in their backyard was a dream come true. Karen's moving day was on a Saturday morning. I made sure to be outside working in my garden as the moving truck loaded up her belongings. She saw me and walked over, her face tight with barely controlled anger. "You ruined my life," she said quietly. "I lost money on this house. My reputation in this community is destroyed. All because of a stupid cat." "Actually, Karen, all because you trapped my cat in a cage for 3 days to prove a point about property rights," I replied, standing up and brushing dirt off my gardening gloves. "I'm a property attorney, Karen. I've spent 15 years studying exactly what people can and cannot do with their property rights. You wanted to teach me a lesson about respecting boundaries and following rules. Consider the lesson delivered. But a whole cat sanctuary? That's insane. That's overkill." "Is it though? You see, that sanctuary is helping hundreds of cats find homes every year. It's providing jobs for animal care workers. It's giving volunteers a place to contribute to their community. It's actually doing enormous good in the world. All I did was connect people who needed something with property that could provide it. Very legal. Very ethical. Very permanent. But my house, my property value. Your property rights, Karen. You got to do whatever you wanted with your property, including trapping my cat. The sanctuary owner got to do whatever they wanted with their property, including building a permitted animal welfare facility. That's how property rights work. Everyone gets to use their property within legal limits. You just didn't like learning that other people have property rights too. Her face went through several shades of red. This isn't over. Actually, it is. You're moving. The sanctuary is thriving. Beethoven is happy and healthy. And I've made some wonderful new friends at the rescue organization. They're even naming one of their cat play structures after Beethoven. The Beethoven Memorial Climbing Tower. Has a nice ring to it, don't you think? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to Karen Eat World if you want to see more entitled people discover that actions have consequences. We post new stories every week about people who thought they were untouchable until someone proved them very, very wrong. Karen stood there, her mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. Behind her, the movers were loading the last boxes into the truck. Behind me, I could hear the happy sounds of cats playing in the sanctuary, volunteers laughing and chatting as they went about their morning routines. Somewhere in the outdoor play area, a bell was ringing, signaling feeding time. You know what the best part is, Karen? I said, unable to resist one final observation. The sanctuary is planning to expand. They're looking at purchasing additional adjacent lots to create an even larger facility. Apparently, this location has been such a success that they want to make it their flagship campus. They're talking about educational programs, veterinary clinics, maybe even boarding services. This whole area might become the premier cat-focused destination in the county. All because you wanted to prove a point about a cat crossing an imaginary line in your yard. The color drained from her face as the full scope of what I'd done finally crystallized in her mind. She'd trapped my cat for 3 days. I'd turned her entire neighborhood into a permanent monument to cats, tanked her property value, and created a lasting community resource that would benefit animals for decades to come. All completely legal. All perfectly within everyone's property rights. She turned without another word and walked back to the moving truck, her shoulders slumped in defeat, as the sounds of dozens of happy cats echoed from the sanctuary behind us.